The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on the cracked asphalt of Murphy's gas station, located 20 miles outside the small town of Cedar Falls. 85-year-old Frank Morrison moved slowly across the parking lot, his weathered aluminum cane tapping rhythmically against the pavement with each careful step. His back was permanently curved from decades of carrying heavy military equipment, and his left leg dragged slightly from shrapnel wounds that never quite healed properly after Vietnam. Despite his physical limitations, Frank maintained the upright posture of a man who had commanded respect for over 3 decades in the United States Army Special Forces. The massive black Harley-Davidson motorcycle gleamed in the parking spot directly in front of the convenience store entrance. Its chrome exhaust pipes reflected the harsh sunlight like mirrors, and custom flame decals decorated the fuel tank in vivid oranges and reds. Frank had parked his modest sedan 3 spaces away, but the narrow walkway between vehicles required him to navigate carefully around the motorcycle's extended handlebars and protruding accessories. As Frank attempted to maneuver past the bike, his cane caught momentarily on the chrome foot peg. The slight contact caused him to lose his balance for just a moment, and his shoulder brushed against the motorcycle's leather seat. The touch was so gentle it wouldn't have disturbed a sleeping cat, but the bike's owner emerged from the store at precisely that moment. Jake Thunder, a mountain of a man standing 6 feet 4 inches tall and weighing close to 300 pounds, stepped out of the convenience store with an energy drink in one massive hand. His leather vest displayed patches from motorcycle clubs across 3 states, and his arms were covered in elaborate tattoos depicting skulls, eagles, and flames. His long gray beard was braided with metal rings, and his eyes held the cold calculation of a man accustomed to intimidating others through sheer physical presence. "You just touched my bike, old man." Jake's voice boomed across the parking lot like thunder before a storm. His steel-toed boots crashed against the asphalt as he approached Frank with purposeful strides. "That machine is worth more than your Social Security check for the next 5 years." Frank turned slowly, his pale blue eyes meeting Jake's angry glare without flinching. "I apologize, sir," Frank said quietly, his voice carrying the measured tone of someone accustomed to defusing tense situations. "I was just trying to get around to the store entrance. I didn't mean any harm to your motorcycle." Jake stepped closer, close enough that Frank could smell the combination of motor oil, cigarettes, and cheap cologne that clung to the biker's leather clothing. "Didn't mean any harm," Jake repeated mockingly, his voice dripping with contempt. "You think I care about your intentions, Grandpa? You put your filthy hands on my ride without permission." Several other customers had emerged from the store and were watching the confrontation with growing concern. A young mother quickly ushered her 2 small children back toward their minivan, while an elderly couple stood frozen near the entrance, unsure whether to intervene or retreat to safety. Frank raised one hand in a peaceful gesture, his military training automatically calculating escape routes and defensive positions even at his advanced age. "Like I said, sir, I apologize for the contact. I'll be more careful in the future. Before we continue, let us know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Your comment helps our community grow stronger." "Thanks, and let's get back to the story." "More careful in the future," Jake laughed harshly, the sound containing no humor whatsoever. "There won't be a future for you to worry about if you don't show proper respect right now. Get down on your knees and apologize to my bike properly." Frank's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but his voice remained steady. "I've already apologized, son. I'm not getting on my knees for anyone." Jake's face flushed red with rage, and his hands clenched into fists the size of bowling balls. The veins in his thick neck bulged as his anger reached dangerous levels. "You called me son, you decrepit old fool." Nobody talks down to Jake Thunder. Nobody. The biker reached into his vest pocket and withdrew a black device about the size of a television remote. The electric taser crackled with blue sparks as Jake held it up for Frank to see clearly. "This little beauty delivers 50,000 volts of pure pain," Jake announced with sadistic pleasure. "Perfect for teaching respect to mouthy senior citizens." Frank's eyes widened as he recognized the weapon, and he took an unsteady step backward. His cane slipped slightly on a patch of loose gravel, compromising his already precarious balance. "Now hold on there," Frank said, his voice losing some of its calm authority for the first time. "There's no need for that kind of escalation." Jake's thumb hovered over the trigger button as he savored the moment of complete power over his elderly victim. Too late for reasonable conversation, Grandpa. You should have thought about consequences before disrespecting me and my property. The taser's electrical discharge sounded like a firecracker exploding in the quiet parking lot. 50,000 volts of electricity coursed through Frank's frail body, causing every muscle to contract simultaneously in agonizing spasms. The old veteran collapsed immediately, his cane clattering across the asphalt as his body convulsed uncontrollably on the hot pavement. Jake stood over Frank's twitching form with obvious satisfaction, the smoking taser still clutched in his meaty fist. "That's what happens when you don't show proper respect to your betters, old man," Jake announced to the horrified witnesses. "Maybe next time you'll think twice before touching other people's property." Frank lay motionless for several long seconds after the electrical current stopped flowing through his system. His weathered face was pressed against the scorching asphalt, and his breathing came in shallow, ragged gasps. The brutal assault had activated his weak heart condition, sending sharp pains shooting through his chest with each labored heartbeat. With tremendous effort, Frank managed to roll onto his side and reach for the cell phone in his shirt pocket. His hand shook violently from the residual effects of the electrical shock, making it nearly impossible to operate the device's small buttons. After 3 failed attempts, he finally managed to dial a number stored in his emergency contacts. The phone rang twice before a crisp, professional voice answered. "Dad, what's wrong?" The voice belonged to Michael Morrison, Frank's only son, calling from his office in downtown Chicago where he operated Morrison Security Solutions, one of the most successful private protection companies in the Midwest. "Michael," Frank whispered into the phone, his voice barely audible over the traffic noise from the nearby highway. "I'm at Murphy's gas station on Route 47. Had a little incident with a motorcycle rider. I'm okay, but I could use some help getting home." "What kind of incident, Dad?" Michael's voice immediately shifted into the commanding tone he used when coordinating high-stakes security operations. "Are you hurt? Do you need medical attention?" Frank glanced up at Jake, who was now leaning against his motorcycle and laughing with 2 other bikers who had arrived during the confrontation. "Just a misunderstanding, son. This fellow got upset about me accidentally touching his motorcycle. He used some kind of electrical device on me." "He tasered you?" Michael's voice turned deadly quiet in a way that would have terrified anyone familiar with his reputation in private security circles. "Dad, stay exactly where you are. Don't engage with anyone. I'm coming to get you right now." "Michael, you don't need to drive all the way out here," Frank protested weakly. "I can probably get a ride from someone at the station." "Dad, listen to me very carefully," Michael said, his voice carrying the absolute authority of a man accustomed to command. "Do not move from that location. Do not interact with the person who assaulted you. I will be there in exactly 30 minutes with appropriate assistance." What Frank didn't know was that his son Michael Morrison had inherited every ounce of his father's military excellence and had transformed it into a highly successful career protecting corporate executives, government officials, and high-net-worth individuals from threats around the world. Michael's company employed 47 former military specialists, many of whom had trained under Frank Morrison during his legendary career as a Special Forces instructor at Fort Bragg. What Jake Thunder didn't know was that Frank Morrison wasn't just any elderly veteran. He was Colonel Frank Morrison, Ret. Ed., who had commanded special operations units through 3 separate combat deployments and had trained over 2,000 elite soldiers during his 32 years of active duty. His military record included 2 Silver Stars, 3 Bronze Stars, and a Distinguished Service Cross for extraordinary heroism under enemy fire. What none of the witnesses knew was that Michael Morrison's phone call had triggered a response protocol that had been refined through years of protecting clients in hostile environments. Within minutes of ending the call with his father, Michael had contacted 6 of his most trusted team members, all of whom dropped everything they were doing to respond to the emergency. Michael's first call went to Marcus Rodriguez, a former Navy SEAL who served as the company's tactical operations coordinator. Marcus was supervising a protection detail for a Fortune 500 CEO when his secure phone buzzed with Michael's priority alert code. "Emergency family situation," Michael explained tersely. "My father has been assaulted by a civilian with a taser at Murphy's gas station on Route 47. I need immediate tactical response with full authority demonstration." Marcus didn't ask for details or explanations. He knew Frank Morrison's reputation from his own military service, and the idea of someone attacking the legendary colonel filled him with cold rage. Copy that, boss. I'll coordinate team response and meet you at the target location in 25 minutes. Michael's second call reached David Kim, a former Army Ranger who specialized in threat assessment and crowd control. David was conducting security training for a client's personal staff when his phone displayed Michael's emergency code. "Dave, I need you to drop everything and respond to Murphy's gas station immediately," Michael said without preamble. "Someone just tossed my father. Bring full tactical gear and prepare for intimidation protocol." David had met Colonel Morrison several times at company events and had listened with rapt attention to the old soldiers' war stories. The thought of someone harming the respected veteran made his blood boil with righteous anger. "I'm en route, sir. 20 minutes out with full equipment." The third call connected Michael with James Patterson, a former Marine Force reconnaissance specialist who handled the company's most dangerous assignments. James was reviewing security protocols at a client's corporate headquarters when Michael's priority alert interrupted his work. "Jim, emergency family response needed immediately," Michael said, his voice tight with controlled fury. "My father has been assaulted at Murphy's gas station. I need overwhelming show of force to handle the situation appropriately." James remembered Colonel Morrison from a company barbecue where the old veteran had shared tactical wisdom that had saved James's life during a subsequent mission in South America. "Sir, I'll be there in 18 minutes with everything we need to resolve this properly." Michael's fourth call reached Robert Stone, a former Delta Force operator who specialized in rapid response and tactical coordination. Robert was conducting a security assessment for a government contractor when his secure communication device activated with Michael's family emergency code. "Bobby, drop everything and respond to Murphy's gas station on Route 47 immediately," Michael ordered. "My father has been tossed by some biker. I need full tactical response to handle this situation with appropriate authority." Robert Stone owed his life to Colonel Morrison's training during his early military career, and the news of the assault triggered a level of personal rage he hadn't felt since combat operations overseas. "Copy, sir. En route with full tactical package. Estimated arrival in 22 minutes. The fifth call connected Michael with Anthony Martinez, a former Special Forces medic who handled the company's emergency medical response protocols. Anthony was updating first aid supplies at the company headquarters when Michael's emergency alert sounded throughout the building. "Tony, I need immediate medical response to Murphy's gas station," Michael explained quickly. "My father has been tossed by a civilian and may need evaluation for cardiac issues related to electrical shock." Anthony grabbed his advanced trauma kit and headed for his vehicle without asking questions. Colonel Morrison had personally recommended him for Special Forces medical training 20 years earlier, launching Anthony's entire military career. "Sir, I'm rolling with full medical support. ETA 19 minutes. Michael's final call reached Thomas Wilson, a former Air Force Security Forces specialist who coordinated the company's tactical communications and surveillance operations. Thomas was installing security equipment at a client location when his emergency phone buzzed insistently. "Tom, I need immediate response to Murphy's gas station with full surveillance and communication support," Michael said tersely. "My father has been assaulted, and I want everything documented for potential legal proceedings." Thomas had served under several officers who had trained with Colonel Morrison, and the veteran's reputation for excellence was legendary throughout military circles. The idea of someone attacking such a respected soldier filled Thomas with determination to see justice delivered swiftly and completely. Within 15 minutes of Frank's phone call, 6 black SUVs were racing toward Murphy's gas station from different locations throughout the Chicago metropolitan area. Each vehicle carried former elite military personnel equipped with tactical gear, advanced communication systems, and years of experience handling high-threat situations with overwhelming professional competence. Meanwhile, Jake Thunder was enjoying his moment of dominance over the elderly veteran who remained sitting on the ground beside his fallen cane. 2 other bikers had joined Jake in mocking Frank's condition, and their laughter echoed across the parking lot like the calls of scavenging birds. "Look at the tough guy now," Jake announced loudly for everyone to hear. "Not so mouthy when you're down on the ground where you belong, Grandpa." Frank remained silent, his military training telling him to assess the situation and avoid escalation until backup arrived. He knew his son well enough to understand that help was coming, and he also knew that help would arrive with overwhelming force and unquestionable authority. What Jake didn't realize was that Frank Morrison had spent 3 decades training the most elite soldiers in the United States military. The men racing toward Murphy's gas station weren't just Michael's employees. They were Frank's former students, and every one of them considered the old colonel a father figure whose wisdom and leadership had shaped their entire careers. The first black SUV appeared on the horizon exactly 28 minutes after Frank's phone call. Michael Morrison sat in the passenger seat, his jaw set in grim determination as he surveyed the gas station parking lot through tactical binoculars. He could see his father sitting on the ground near a large motorcycle, surrounded by 3 bikers who appeared to be enjoying their victim's helplessness. The second SUV arrived 30 seconds later, followed quickly by the remaining 4 vehicles. They arranged themselves in a tactical formation around the gas station, effectively controlling all escape routes while maintaining clear lines of sight and communication. Each vehicle's occupants emerged simultaneously, moving with the precision and coordination that comes only from years of professional military training and high-risk operational experience. Michael Morrison stepped out of the lead vehicle wearing a perfectly tailored black suit that concealed body armor and tactical equipment. His appearance was that of a successful businessman, but his movement and bearing radiated the lethal competence of someone accustomed to life-and-death situations. Behind him, 6 former elite military specialists arranged themselves in a loose semicircle, their professional gear and obvious competence creating an atmosphere of overwhelming authority. Jake Thunder looked up from his mockery of Frank to see the small army of professionals approaching with obvious tactical intent. His initial reaction was confusion, followed quickly by the first stirrings of genuine fear as he realized these men were not ordinary civilians or local law enforcement. Michael walked directly to his father and knelt beside him, his trained eyes quickly assessing Frank's condition for signs of serious injury. "Dad, are you hurt anywhere besides the taser shock?" Michael asked quietly, his voice carrying both concern and barely controlled rage. "I'm okay, son," Frank replied, accepting Michael's help in getting back to his feet. "Just shaken up a bit. This gentleman took exception to me accidentally brushing against his motorcycle." Michael helped his father stand and handed him his cane, then turned to face Jake Thunder with eyes that had seen combat in Afghanistan and Iraq. The transformation in Michael's demeanor was immediate and terrifying. The concerned son disappeared, replaced by a tactical professional who specialized in neutralizing threats through overwhelming force. "You're the individual who assaulted my father," Michael said, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone accustomed to command. His tone was conversational, almost friendly, which somehow made his words more menacing than shouting would have been. Jake tried to maintain his aggressive posture, but the presence of 6 obviously professional operators was undermining his confidence rapidly. "Your old man disrespected my property," Jake said, though his voice lacked its earlier arrogance. "I was just teaching him some manners." Michael nodded thoughtfully, as if considering Jake's explanation with genuine interest. "You used a taser on an 85-year-old man because he accidentally touched your motorcycle," Michael repeated slowly. "Is that an accurate summary of the situation?" The 6 members of Michael's team had positioned themselves strategically around the confrontation, their tactical expertise obvious to anyone with military experience. Marcus Rodriguez stood to Michael's left, his hand resting casually on his tactical vest. David Kim had moved to control the area near Jake's motorcycle, while James Patterson positioned himself to intercept any attempt at escape. Jake's 2 biker companions had quietly retreated toward their motorcycles, recognizing that the situation had escalated far beyond their ability to handle. The other witnesses in the parking lot watched in fascination as the power dynamic shifted completely in favor of the elderly veteran and his obviously professional rescue team. Michael reached into his suit jacket and withdrew a leather credential wallet, which he opened to display his company identification and various professional certifications. "My name is Michael Morrison, and I operate Morrison Security Solutions," Michael explained in the same conversational tone. "We provide protection services for corporate executives, government officials, and high-net-worth individuals throughout North America." Jake's eyes widened as he read the credentials, beginning to understand that he had made a serious error in judgment. The professional appearance and obvious competence of Michael's team was unlike anything he had encountered in his years of intimidating ordinary citizens. "The man you assaulted is Colonel Frank Morrison, retired," Michael continued, his voice gaining steel undertones. He served 32 years in the United States Army Special Forces, including 3 combat deployments and over a decade training elite soldiers at Fort Bragg. He has been awarded 2 Silver Stars, 3 Bronze Stars, and the Distinguished Service Cross for extraordinary heroism under enemy fire. Frank remained silent, allowing his son to handle the situation with the professional competence he had demonstrated throughout his career. The old colonel recognized the tactical formation his son's team had established and approved of their discipline and positioning. Every man standing behind me was trained by my father during their military service, Michael continued, gesturing toward his team members. Marcus Rodriguez served 2 tours with the Navy SEALs. David Kim completed 3 deployments with the Army Rangers. James Patterson spent 5 years with Marine Force Reconnaissance. These men consider my father a mentor whose training saved their lives in combat situations around the world. Jake's face had gone pale as he began to comprehend the magnitude of his mistake. What had seemed like easy intimidation of a helpless elderly man had somehow transformed into a confrontation with military professionals who possessed both the skills and motivation to deliver serious consequences. Anthony Martinez approached Frank with his medical kit and began checking the old veteran's vital signs with professional competence. "Colonel, your pulse is elevated and irregular," Anthony reported to Michael. "The electrical shock may have triggered some cardiac stress. I recommend immediate evaluation at the nearest emergency facility." "You used a potentially lethal weapon on an 85-year-old man with a known heart condition," Michael said to Jake, his voice now carrying unmistakable menace. "In addition to assault charges, you could be facing attempted murder depending on the medical evaluation results." Jake's arrogance had completely evaporated, replaced by genuine fear of the consequences he was facing. "I didn't know he had heart problems," Jake stammered. "I was just trying to teach him some respect." Michael stepped closer to Jake, close enough that the biker could see the cold calculation in his eyes. "You didn't bother to learn anything about the man you were attacking," Michael said quietly. "You saw an elderly person with a cane and decided he would be an easy target for your aggression." Thomas Wilson had been recording the entire confrontation with professional-grade equipment, documenting Jake's admission of assault and his obvious lack of remorse for attacking an elderly veteran. The footage would provide overwhelming evidence for any legal proceedings that might follow. "Colonel, Morrison dedicated his entire adult life to serving this country and training soldiers to protect American citizens," Michael continued, his voice carrying the moral authority of absolute truth. "He earned the right to walk anywhere in this nation without fear of assault from cowards who prey on the elderly." Jake looked around desperately for support from his companions, but they had retreated to a safe distance and were obviously unwilling to face professional operators on behalf of someone who had just admitted to assaulting an elderly veteran. The other witnesses in the parking lot were watching with obvious approval as justice was finally being served. "You're going to apologize to my father immediately," Michael ordered, his tone brooking no argument. "Then you're going to explain to everyone present why attacking elderly veterans demonstrates cowardice rather than strength." Jake's shoulders slumped in defeat as he realized there was no escape from the consequences of his actions. "I apologize, sir," Jake said to Frank, his voice barely audible. "I shouldn't have lost my temper over something so minor." Frank nodded with dignity, accepting the apology without gloating over his antagonist's humiliation. "Apology accepted, son," Frank said quietly. "I hope you'll remember this lesson about treating people with respect regardless of their age or appearance." Michael wasn't finished with the lesson he intended to deliver. "You need to understand something very clearly," Michael said to Jake. "My father represents everything that's honorable about military service and sacrifice for others. When you attack someone like him, you're not just assaulting an individual, you're attacking the values and principles that keep this country free." The 6 team members remained in position, their professional competence serving as a powerful reminder of the consequences that await those who prey on the vulnerable. Their presence transformed the parking lot into a classroom where important lessons about respect and accountability were being delivered with unmistakable clarity. Marcus Rodriguez stepped forward and addressed Jake directly, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had faced genuine danger in combat situations. "Sir, I served under Colonel Morrison's training program before my deployment to Afghanistan," Marcus said formally. "His instruction in tactical operations and leadership under fire saved my life and the lives of my teammates multiple times during combat operations." David Kim joined the testimonial, his respect for Frank obvious in his bearing and tone. Colonel Morrison's training in reconnaissance and survival techniques kept my unit alive during a 3-day mission behind enemy lines in Iraq, David added. Every lesson he taught us was paid for with his own blood and sacrifice in previous conflicts. One by one, each member of Michael's team shared their personal connection to Frank's military legacy, painting a picture of a man whose influence had shaped careers and saved lives across multiple generations of elite soldiers. Their testimonials created a powerful contrast to Jake's ignorant assumption that Frank was just another helpless elderly target. Jake listened in growing shame as he realized he had attacked not just any veteran, but a legendary figure whose training and leadership had influenced some of the most elite military units in American history. The magnitude of his error in judgment was becoming overwhelmingly clear with each passing moment. This is what earned respect looks like, Michael concluded, gesturing toward his team and his father. It's built through decades of service, sacrifice, and dedication to principles larger than personal comfort or convenience. It can't be demanded through intimidation or violence. It must be earned through consistent demonstration of character under pressure. Frank placed a gentle hand on his son's arm, recognizing that the lesson had been delivered with appropriate force and that further escalation would serve no constructive purpose. Michael, I think this young man understands the situation now, Frank said quietly. Perhaps we should focus on getting me checked out medically and let him reflect on what he's learned today. Michael nodded, accepting his father's wisdom about knowing when to conclude a tactical operation. You're absolutely right, Dad, Michael agreed. Anthony, let's get Colonel Morrison to the emergency room for a complete evaluation. As the Morrison team prepared to leave, Jake Thunder stood alone beside his motorcycle, stripped of his arrogance and forced to confront the reality of what he had done. The other witnesses began approaching Frank to express their support and admiration, creating a stark contrast between the respect earned through service and the fear generated through bullying. Frank Morrison walked slowly toward his son's vehicle, supported by the same cane that had started the entire confrontation. His dignity remained intact despite the assault, and his quiet strength served as a powerful example of grace under pressure. Behind him, 6 professional warriors maintained their protective formation, a living testament to the lasting impact of principled leadership and dedicated service to others. The last image Jake Thunder saw was Colonel Frank Morrison being helped into a luxury SUV by men who considered it an honor to serve someone who had dedicated his life to serving others. The lesson about earned versus demanded respect had been delivered with overwhelming clarity, leaving no doubt about which approach creates lasting influence and genuine authority.